Crawford's kin. During the midnight hours of July 1, 1970, Elmer Kyle Crawford orchestrated a chilling purge of his family in Glenroy. Wife, theirs, was 35 and pregnant when a lethal, handcrafted current stole her life while she slumbered. He'd rigged a 15-meter wire tipped with jagged clips, a custom instrument forged for this nightmare. His 3 young children were also silenced forever that night, within their Glenelg sanctuary. He swaddled the remains in wool, cramming them into the family sedan alongside a bike, fuel cans, and a rifle. A 200-kilometer trek through darkness led him to the mist-shrouded cliffs of Lockhart Gorge. To mask the slaughter, he rigged an exhaust line and sent the car plunging into the churning abyss below the cliff. By July 2nd, travelers glimpsed the mangled steel resting on the rocks far beneath the precipice. Yet, while his family lay broken in the wreckage, the patriarch had vanished like a ghost. He was spotted at the house that final afternoon, only to slip into the ether forever. The town reeled in horror as a hunt began. What darkness drives a man to hunt his own kin? Dark whispers of greed began to surface as investigators peeled back the layers of his plan. Freshly signed legal documents revealed a trail of gold leading straight to his pockets. He craved the insurance payouts and legacies, hoping a staged tragedy would pave his way to wealth. Before the blood, he was just an Irishman who crossed the seas, chasing the elusive Australian dream. He held different positions, masked by the facade of a mundane suburban father, hiding the monster within from the neighbors. Workplace theft had trapped him in a corner, fueling a desperate and deadly exit strategy. A massive dragnet swept across the continent, a pursuit that technically remains active to this hour. For decades, he stayed a shadow. Despite countless glimpses, he remained Australia's most elusive phantom. But every lead eventually dissolved into nothingness. In 2008, a bounty of 100,000 Australian dollars was placed on the head of the man who walked away. The offer reignited public curiosity, yet the silence from the grave remained unbroken for the investigators. A strange flicker of hope emerged in 2010 when a potential match surfaced. DNA testing on a corpse found in the Texas dust proved it wasn't him, shattering the theory. Just like that, the most promising spark in 40 years was snuffed out. Those who shared his workspace recalled a man of eerie composure, completely normal before the massacre. There were no cracks in his armor, no hints of the carnage he was meticulously preparing. It was that terrifying normalcy, the ability to smile while sharpening the blade that haunted everyone. Rumors swirled about where the fugitive could have found sanctuary after the plunge. Some whispered he'd vanished into the scorched, desolate heart of Western Australia's vast wilderness. Others suspected he slipped away, using stolen identities to reach foreign shores. The brutal, empty expanse of the outback offered 1,000 places for a murderer to bury his past. Analysis of his lethal invention exposed a soul that had been calculating this horror for a long time. This wasn't a moment of madness. He had custom-built a death trap for those he loved. Every wire and clip screamed of cold, deliberate intent, months in the making. 5 decades have weathered the files, yet he remains at the top of the nation's most wanted. The original hunters have mostly grown old or gone to their graves, but cold case units still chase his shadow. His survival remains a dark and total unknown. If he survived the night, he likely lived as a shadow, taking his true name to the furnace. A lingering void haunts the relatives and the shattered neighborhood left behind. Shadowy figures escape justice, vanishing into the fog of failed inquiries, searching through the dust of 30 long years. A ghost dubbed Mr. Cruel snatched young Carmine Chan from her Templestowe sanctuary on April 13, 1991. This nightmare belonged to a string of chillingly alike horrors. A phantom predator stalked the youth across Melbourne's quiet eastern reaches. She was silenced like a witness, perhaps for glimpsing the monster's true face. Spring of 1992 revealed her remains hidden within Edgar's Creek. Finding her brought a grim truth, but ignited even darker riddles. His sinister name arose from a chilling history of identical tactics. This hunter moved with surgical precision, leaving not a single trace. Hiding behind a mask, he scrubbed every scene to remain a cipher. What left the seasoned detectives so utterly defeated? Years of terror yielded 0 physical clues for the investigators. The culprit clearly possessed deep, inside expertise. He understood the law's playbook and how to vanish from it. Survivors recalled a masked man who acted with a jarring, eerie kindness. He played a twisted game, desperate to seem human while doing the unthinkable. This mental warfare chilled the experts to their very core. Authorities scoured every corner of the city, chasing endless whispers. The sketches pointed toward a man trained in the very tactics used to catch him. He was a master of evasion, expertly dodging every modern trap. Cryptic scrawls near the creek hinted at a drug-fueled madness. Detectives saw the writing as a clever ruse to derail the hunt. His cold, calculated strikes didn't fit the profile of a desperate addict. A bounty of 100,000 Australian dollars hangs over his head. Despite the money and the fame, the trail remains frozen in time. Modern analysis has shed a new, haunting light. He likely honed his dark craft through a series of stealthy break-ins. That history explains his ghostly ability to slip through locked doors. This link to past thefts opened a fresh path for the hunt. 3 decades of silence still weigh heavy on the soul of Victoria. His escape was either a miracle of luck or a masterpiece of malice. The monster might have vanished, relocated, or finally met his end. The city's sense of safety was permanently scarred by his shadow. A frantic protectiveness took hold of every home with children. Suburban houses transformed into fortresses of alarms and steel. The dread of a hidden hunter rewrote the rules of family life. For 30 years, her kin have walked a path paved with grief. They have pleaded with the public, keeping the flame of memory alive. The fact that he still breathes free remains a stinging injustice. The file stays open, a silent promise from the authorities. Specialists look to the future, hoping new science unmasks the devil. Other hunts ended in chains after grueling secret wars. They caught their prey through shadows and clever deceptions. On a humid December 7th, 2003, young Daniel Morecambe vanished from a Sunshine Coast roadside under the afternoon sun. This disappearance would haunt Australia for years, until a brilliant, high-stakes sting operation finally unmasked the shadows. A simple trip to buy holiday gifts turned tragic when a missed bus left him vulnerable and alone. While stranded between schedules, a predator named Brett Peter Cowan pulled his vehicle over. With sinister lies, Cowan coaxed the boy into his car, sealing his fate. The nation erupted in a frantic hunt, as thousands of desperate volunteers searched every bush and gully. His parents, Bruce and Denise, became symbols of hope, tirelessly pleading through the airwaves while leading a massive movement across Queensland. The trail grew cold as agonizing seasons turned into hollow years. Investigators hit wall after wall, despite their relentless quest to find the truth. By 2011, a masterstroke of deception began using elite covert operatives. Police lured Cowan into a fake criminal empire, baiting him with the promise of easy money. For months on end, they seduced him into their web, masquerading as his only true friends. Thinking he was safe within his inner circle, the monster finally whispered his darkest secrets into a wire. Cowan carried a vile history of targeting children that spanned across state borders long before. His gruesome record should have flagged him as a primary suspect from day one, yet bureaucratic blindness and data gaps let him slip through the cracks initially. Within that intricate charade, he personally guided the agents to a secluded burial site hidden in the scrub. Recovering the remains brought a bittersweet end to the family's nightmare, while cementing the legal trap. Handcuffed and shamed, he faced a media circus during his high-profile 2014 trial. Prosecutors unveiled the recorded admission and bone-chilling physical evidence that left no room for doubt. Lawyers fought to bury the undercover tapes, claiming the deception was too extreme for court. Justice finally struck as a jury condemned him to life, mandating at least 20 years behind bars. The heavy sentence honored the stolen life and the scar left on the Australian soul. Turning their agony into action, the family launched a foundation in their son's name, devoted to shielding every child from the reach of predators. They provide life-saving toolkits and training to keep our families vigilant and safe. Today, it stands as the nation's premier guardian of youthful innocence. In the yard, he became a target for vigilante justice, facing brutal assaults from fellow inmates. Now, he spends his days buried in solitary, hidden away for his own protection. The autopsy of the investigation revealed glaring red flags that authorities had tragically ignored. His sickening track record should have put him under the microscope much sooner. This failure triggered a massive overhaul of how police share sensitive criminal intel. The daring ruse that cracked the case earned worldwide acclaim for its sheer audacity. It proved that gritty police work, merged with psychological warfare, can solve the impossible. Global law enforcement now mimics these tactics to hunt the most elusive monsters. Other files tell of festive nights that devolved into horrific local betrayals. Take Lele. In November 1989, she went to a Stockton Beach bonfire seeking fun. The celebration turned into a nightmare of cruelty that shattered the town. It tore the veil off a community plagued by silence and avoided truths. Under the stars, multiple monsters preyed upon the defenseless girl in a senseless frenzy. Reports suggest a dozen individuals watched or participated in the heinous acts. Only 3 faced the law eventually. Webster used a beach stone to kill. Murder was his desperate way to silence. Panic birthed a night of pure terror. Sunrise brought Newcastle a horrifying discovery. Savagery left a shadow over that party. The hunt hit walls from day one. Lab clues hinted at phantoms walking free. Webster broke. His cohorts escaped justice entirely. His admission shed light on the darkness. Sinister secrets remained buried by the silent. Webster got 20 years for his crime. He walked out after 14 years served. Locals felt that pittance mocked Lee's life. Rot in local policing was finally exposed. Biased eyes supposedly led the entire search. Some were shielded, while others faced fire. Uncharged monsters fueled a fire of rage. Justice failed, as many participants simply vanished. Lee's death became Australia's most haunting symbol. Painful national soul-searching began. Can our laws truly cage a pack? That fatal bash exposed deadly negligence. A crowd watched Lee's light go out. Released in 2004, he vanished. His freedom sparked a bitter public outcry. Many felt he deserved life for savagery. Newcastle's heart bears a scar that bleeds. Closure died because many walked away free. They fight to stop history's repeating sins. Science pointed to others. The law blinked. DNA screamed of a conspiracy left uncharged. Certain enigmas stay frozen despite the world. Answers never came. Beaumont Trio, January 26th. 1966, siblings headed for the coast. They evaporated, leaving a 60-year-old riddle. A spindly stranger was seen trailing them. He seemed familiar, or perhaps just predatory. That sighting became a haunting centerpiece. Parents realized their nightmare by late dusk. A desperate hunt mobilized every local soul. Every grain of sand was sifted fruitlessly. Hundreds searched, yet the children simply vanished. Focus narrowed on that tall, shadowy figure. For 10-year stretches, many shady figures faced intense scrutiny as investigators chased every whisper and scrap of proof. Witness accounts triggered hunts for men who shared those eerie physical traits. Shady local ties or bizarre conduct forced others into the crosshairs of the law. Regardless, 0 indictments ever emerged from these exhaustive manhunts. Cruel pranksters sent deceptive notes pretending to be the killer, haunting the probe with lies about the kids. These wicked distractions drained vital police energy while tormenting the parents with agonizingly fake promises of closure. Sifting truth from sadistic fiction proved a nightmare for those desperate for a break. Self-proclaimed mediums pointed to secret graves, sparking costly digs that only unearthed more hollow silence. While cameras flocked to these mystical hunts, they never recovered a single piece of evidence. Every unsuccessful search only deepened the suffocating sense of hopelessness. 2018 saw fresh dirt fly at an old industrial lot after whispers suggested a dark secret lay beneath. Just like every prior attempt, this effort failed to deliver the long-awaited miracle. $1 million Australian awaits anyone who can finally shatter the silence and solve this riddle. Even that massive fortune hasn't lured out the truth behind this decades-long vanishing act. Both police and basement detectives have spun a web of wild conjectures over the years. Detectives often wonder if this nightmare links to other cold-blooded crimes from that dark period. Whispers frequently point toward monsters like Bevan Van Einem as potential culprits. Still, no hard evidence confirms these dark theories. This tragedy shattered the nation's illusion of safety for their precious little ones. Families whispered this grim story as a warning to children for many decades. It radically transformed how society taught children to fear the shadows and strangers. Jim and Nancy went to their graves haunted by the silence regarding their stolen children. Jim died in 2009 and Nancy in 2019, both still searching. Watching their endless, fruitless quest for peace was truly soul-crushing for the world. Authorities still keep the file open, funding a perpetual hunt. Specialized units track every fresh whisper, praying that modern science can identify any bones eventually unearthed. Genetic testing could finally name the victims, much like other long-buried secrets recently revealed. High-tech biology meets sheer grit. Claremont murders. Starting in 1996, Perth's wealthy Claremont district became a hunting ground for innocent girls. These vanishings rocked a trendy party hub, previously thought to be completely secure. A chilling wave of terror gripped every corner of the city. 18-year-old Sarah Spears vanished in early 1996 after a night out, last spotted at a lonely payphone. Nearly 30 years of scouring the earth has failed to locate her missing remains. 23-year-old Jane Rimmer evaporated into the night air outside a local hotel that June. 2 months later, her brutalized remains were discovered in the wild scrub south of town. 27-year-old Sierra Glennon vanished next March, her broken body found in northern woods 3 weeks later. Her injuries matched the sadistic signature left on Jane's body. It evolved into a massive, record-breaking manhunt that drained the country's coffers for decades. Investigators grilled thousands, chasing ghosts across the vast stretches of the Western Territory. Cops first targeted cabbies, since 2 girls were last seen trying to hail a ride. Yet, despite throwing millions at the case, a solid killer remained a ghost for 20 years. Biological clues were left behind, but they didn't link to any known criminals on file. The trail froze until 2016, when futuristic genetic mapping finally cracked the silence. Traces under Sierra's nails finally snared Bradley Robert Edwards, a local phone technician hiding in plain sight. Microscopic threads from his work gear snared him, proving he was the Phantom. Traces matching his uniform were found on her remains, confirming the DNA's grim verdict. As a phone tech, he prowled every corner of the city, hidden behind a badge. Masked as a dull neighbor, he lurked in plain sight, dodging the law for decades. Those nearby knew him only as a silent, totally forgettable shadow. Digging deeper, sleuths unearthed a dark trail of older attacks following the same blueprint. Back then, nobody connected those forgotten strikes to the nightmares haunting the Perth suburbs. Handcuffed at last, he faced a litany of gruesome accusations. Spanning 2019 and 20, the trial became the most tangled legal saga ever. Lawyers meticulously showcased the microscopic traces and genetic fingerprints that doomed the technician. Testimony exposed a rising tide of violence, proving his sinister evolution over many dark years. He clung to lies throughout the entire grueling legal battle. His lawyers fought the biology, claiming the samples were botched during their long slumber. Yet, officials proved every vial was guarded and analyzed with absolute clinical precision. 2020 brought the gavel down, branding him the slayer of those young souls. Though cleared of one vanishing, the haunting similarities left detectives certain he took her. The judge handed down a life term, locking him away for 40 years. This ensured he would become a geriatric captive under the nation's harshest minimum stay. He'll be 80-something before even dreaming of walking free from his iron cage. Other horrors involve predators stalking lonely highways, preying on those just passing through. 7 travelers vanished from the roads between 1989 and 93. A dense forest south of Sydney finally surrendered their remains from the shadows. This grisly discovery unmasked a world-renowned monster lurking in the Australian bush. These wanderers hailed from lands like Britain and Germany, seeking adventure but finding death. Thumbing rides was the norm back then, a fatal mistake for those roaming highways. Their shallow graves lay deep within desolate woods, miles from the reach of civilization. Ivan Milat was the butcher behind all 7 of those horrific disappearances. Luring them with a lift, he ferried his unsuspecting prey into the dark woods. He inflicted unimaginable cruelty upon them, before hiding their broken forms beneath the canopy. Solving this was a nightmare, as the victims were scattered across years and continents. At first, detectives saw only isolated cases, missing the bloody thread joining them. Only when the earth gave up its dead did the terrifying truth finally surface. In 1994, a lucky survivor named Paul Onions broke the case wide open. He told of a terrifying encounter where a driver drew a gun mid-journey. Leaping for his life, the traveler fled the car and signaled a driver for salvation. That brave witness's story was the silver bullet needed to bring the killer down. Armed with warrants, cops tore through his house and his kin's properties for secrets. They unearthed the gear and stolen belongings of the many missing souls. Blood-stained tools of the trade were hidden right there in the open. The mountain of proof connecting him to the dead was simply undeniable. He belonged to a sprawling, notorious clan, rooted in the outskirts of Sydney. Violence and theft were practically traditions within that dark family tree. Their twisted history pointed toward a legacy of malice and deep-seated chaos. He never admitted his sins, even as the evidence buried him alive in court. Lawyers tried blaming his brothers, but every drop of evidence led straight back to him. 1996. Milet was condemned to rot behind bars for eternity, denied any hope of freedom. This heavy fate mirrored his brutality, setting a chilling record in the nation's courtrooms. Chilling whispers arose about shadowy figures who might have helped him execute his crimes. Traces left behind suggested that this predator wasn't always hunting alone in the dark. Detectives hunted for hidden allies in his circle, yet no one else faced the music. Dark rumors still linger that his body count reached far beyond the official victims. Forgotten disappearances from those years bore his same terrifying and unique signature. Yet, the ironclad proof needed to tie him to those spirits never surfaced. The horrific slayings forever poisoned the spirit of the open road across the continent. Global nomads suddenly feared the kindness of strangers on every desolate stretch of road. The country's image as a safe paradise for young wanderers was utterly destroyed. Sickness finally claimed his life in prison during October 2019. He carried his darkest secrets to the grave, never breathing a word of confession. With his heart stopping, the full scope of his evil remains forever shrouded in mystery. If these haunting descents into the criminal abyss truly fascinate you, join our circle by subscribing and ringing that bell for your next dark mystery. This saga proved how monsters stalk the most vulnerable on sun-bleached highways. Witness Peter Falconeo. July 14, 2001. A couple's outback trek met a sudden terrifying end. The pair of British explorers were driving through the heart of the desolate wild, deep in the Northern Territory. Their adventure became a nightmare that haunted the world. A stranger in a white ute lured them with a lie about car trouble. Trusting the man, Peter stepped out to check on the supposed mechanical flaw. While he inspected the back, a sharp crack shattered the silent desert air. Joanne looked up to find a cold barrel pointed directly at her life. Though bound, she fled into the scrub while a spotlight hunted for her in the dark. Her story of shivering in the blackness while being hunted became a legendary chill. She eventually hailed a passing rig, escaping the clutches of the desert predator. Peter's remains vanished, leaving a void filled by wild theories and dark secrets. Doubters wondered if something even more sinister happened on that haunted highway. The hunt focused on unmasking the ghost who had signaled from the white truck. Biological traces on her clothes and the bindings provided a silent witness to evil. Furthermore, grainy tapes from a roadside stop showed a suspicious truck prowling near the scene. The trail led to Bradley John Murdoch, a mechanic with a very dark background. He was smuggling contraband across state lines when their paths crossed in the desert. Lawmen finally cornered him in 2002, ending his long run from justice. Facing murder charges, his 2005 trial became a massive global sensation. The state presented a map of genetic proof tying him directly to the scene. They showcased her harrowing memories and her certain identification of the suspect. Video clues and forensic evidence were stitched together to trap him that night. Murdoch never broke, while his team argued that no body meant no crime. They attacked the science and tried to cast a shadow of doubt on her memory. 2005. Convicted at last, he was handed a life term with 28 years of mandatory lockup. Genetic traces and a witness's haunting story placed him directly at the scene of the crime. A nameless, cryptic note arrived, whispering secrets about where the bones might be hidden. Searches proved fruitless. The message was either a cruel prank or a map to nowhere. The entire ordeal sparked a firestorm of fierce public debate and lingering doubt. Skeptics picked apart the survivor's memory, searching for cracks in her harrowing account. Without a body to bury, many argued the truth remained buried in the sand. Yet, the microscopic evidence was chilling enough for the 12 to demand his cage. Reports from behind the steel bars paint a grim picture of his life in the shadows. He clings to a lie of innocence, refusing to reveal where the victim finally rests. By early 2026, he remains entombed in prison, a dark stain on Outback's safety. This random strike in the middle of nowhere proved how defenseless a lone traveler is. Now, young drifters think twice before stopping for a stranger on those dusty, lonely roads. Dark rumors and wild guesses still swirl around the soul who vanished into thin air. Many believe the desert swallowed him whole, hiding the remains in its vast, empty heart. Other ghost stories persist, but they lack the cold, hard proof to be taken seriously. For the grieving family, the empty casket makes the loss feel like a never-ending nightmare. They got their verdict, but without a final resting place, the wound will never heal. Some horrors involve packs of monsters who hunted together with unimaginable, calculated cruelty. Anita Kabi. One night in 1986, the 26-year-old stepped off the train toward a waiting nightmare. A nurse by trade and a beauty by grace, her kindness was legendary in the city. The tragedy that unfolded that evening would leave a permanent scar on the nation's soul. 5 predators in a prowling car were hunting for a victim when they saw her alone. The Travers and Murphy gangs snatched her away, dragging her to a desolate, dark field. They unleashed pure evil upon her, eventually silencing her forever to hide their sins. A farmer stumbled upon the horror the next dawn, leaving hardened investigators visibly shaken. Catching these demons became an obsession, launching a massive manhunt involving hundreds of officers. The trail initially led back to the stolen vehicle used in the abduction. The community spoke up, feeding the police the breadcrumbs needed to find the killers. This brotherhood of blood was bound by family ties and a history of shared crimes. Within a few short weeks, the shackles were finally slapped onto all 5 men. Under the bright lights of the station, the gang's resolve crumbled into chilling confessions. Their admissions provided a vivid, gruesome map of that final, terrifying journey. Between the lab results and their own voices, the case against them was an iron trap. The 1987 trial was a media circus that left the entire country gasping. The sheer randomness of the strike fueled a desperate scream for the harshest possible penalty. Each man was cast into the abyss, sentenced to life without any hope of freedom. The heavy gavel fell to match the weight of their sins and public fury. It remains a chilling milestone in the history of local criminal justice. Never before had so many been buried alive in prison for one single night's work. They tried a clever ruse, making the scene look like a simple mugging gone wrong. Her purse was gutted and belongings tossed around to lead the law astray. But detectives quickly realized the robbery was a fake cover for a far more sinister motive. Leaked secrets from the investigation turned the public's shock into a burning, white-hot rage. Forbidden police files leaked to the press, igniting a massive wave of pure, unbridled public fury. Sensational headlines swayed the masses, cornering the courts while the 5 killers' dark, broken pasts emerged. Every perpetrator carried a violent record, born from the shadows of a truly haunting upbringing. Nevertheless, the court refused to let their tragic origins justify the horrific carnage they unleashed. John Travers stood out as the cold strategist who orchestrated and led the entire nightmare. Deemed the group's deadliest member, his chilling lack of regret and defiant courtroom antics paralyzed every observer. Michael Murdoch perished behind bars in December 2022, leaving the remaining 4 to rot. Freedom is a ghost for them. They are officially marked to die within those stone walls. This haunting tragedy forced New South Wales to completely overhaul the laws governing release for brutal predators. It serves as a grim landmark for any discussion regarding the ultimate price for monstrous crimes. Those permanent stays set a new standard, weighing the hope for reform against the need for retribution. Because the nightmare was so profoundly evil, society wondered if such evil could ever be cured, or if total isolation was the only answer. For Anita's heartbroken family, those eternal terms offered a sliver of peace, yet the hollow ache of loss remains forever. Her father transformed into a fierce crusader for victims, successfully pushing for more ruthless punishments for killers. The intense media spotlight raised deep ethical concerns about how the press reports on graphic bloodshed. Leaked gore traumatized the nation and the survivors, demanding a new, more respectful code for crime journalism. Certain tragedies saw blood relatives betraying one another in the most appalling and shocking fashions. The Lynn Massacre. During the dark hours of July 17 to 18, 2009, 5 relatives were slaughtered. The victims included Min and Yoon, their sons Henry and Terry, and Min's sister, Irene. The sheer savagery of the sight left even veteran detectives trembling in total disbelief. Every victim was crushed by a heavy weapon while drifting in their final, peaceful sleep. The killer moved with surgical precision through every room, leaving valuables untouched, ruling out any simple robbery. Such cold efficiency pointed directly toward an insider, someone who knew the home's darkest secrets. Robert Shee, an in-law living nearby, became the prime suspect due to his hauntingly close connections. Detectives started digging into his private dealings with the dead, hunting for a hidden spark of malice. Their probe unearthed a tangled and toxic web of domestic friction. She nursed a deep-seated envy toward Min, fueled by bitter rivalries over wealth and social standing. Additionally, disturbing testimony surfaced regarding his predatory behavior toward a relative who had survived the night. By 2011, a microscopic trace of DNA finally linked Chi to the bloody scene. A tiny droplet of blood, bearing Xie's unique biological signature, was discovered inside the residence. This forensic link proved devastating for the defense, providing the state with an undeniable scientific smoking gun. Authorities booked Xie for 5 brutal murders. Though the labyrinthine legal battle dragged on for many years, justice finally faced its day in 2016, 7 long years after that horrific midnight. Prosecutors unleashed the genetic proof alongside a timeline of Xie's suspicious conduct and his lethal motives. They exposed his greed and petty grudges, while revealing repulsive personal acts that further fueled his intent. Throughout the entire ordeal, Xie stubbornly clung to his cold wall of silence. His lawyers fought the genetic findings, suggesting the sample was just a harmless byproduct of family visits. They attempted to dismiss the alleged grudges as nothing more than flimsy and speculative theories. In 2017, the jury delivered a crushing verdict of guilty. Xie received 5 simultaneous life terms. These stacked sentences mirrored the sheer monstrosity of systematically extinguishing 5 innocent lives in one night. Xie fought back, desperately citing technical flaws in a bid to overturn his permanent fate. By 2007, Seth Gonzalez had finally run out of every possible legal lifeline. By 2026, he remained entombed in a cell, his legal paths blocked. Sickening family secrets clawed their way out, exposing misconduct hidden for years. That hidden betrayal gave the law a motive, adding haunting depth to the horror. The Lynn Massacre paralyzed North Epping, leaving Sydney cold with terror. The chilling reality of a relative turning predator shattered every sense of security. Nearby residents were left in absolute shambles by the news. It was a haunting lesson in how quiet grudges ignite into unthinkable evil. A suffocating web of tradition and heavy pressure, mixed with bitter envy, brewed a poison that destroyed everything. The survivors are haunted by 5 empty chairs and a killer from their blood. This twin horror was brutal, but science eventually unmasked the truth. One invisible speck of crimson was the ultimate proof that condemned Z. Some horrors are carefully choreographed stage plays, scripted solely to lead the law into a trap. July 10th, 2001. 3 lives were extinguished in their North Ryde home. The fallen were Teddy, his partner Loiva, and their young daughter, Klein. At first, it looked like a targeted strike, with messages defacing the walls. Ugly, bigoted slurs were painted everywhere, screaming of a motive built on prejudice. It appeared a nameless stranger had hunted them for who they were. But detectives saw through the theater, sensing the whole display was a lie. Seth Gonzalez, the son who found the carnage, became the prime suspect. His cold reaction after the discovery raised immediate alarms for the police. He was obsessing over trivial details, instead of grieving his lost family. Scrutiny revealed a home life fractured by war over his grades and choices. His folks demanded perfection, a bar Seth was nowhere near reaching. That crushing weight turned their domestic life into a pressure cooker. Then came the kicker. He was next in line for a massive fortune. Greed and hate formed a motive, with fake graffiti serving as cover. His alibis began to crumble as inconsistencies in his story surfaced. Forensic proof put him at the heart of the storm, proving his lies. In 2002, the cuffs clicked shut for those 3 cold acts. The mountain of proof against him was impossible to ignore. By 2004, the trial became a circus feasting on the tragedy. Lawyers showed he'd used both a blade and a tool to silence them. They proved he was the one holding the spray can, faking a crime. The court saw a man desperate for money and escape from his parents. Guilty on all counts, he was handed a cage with no exit door. His heartless planning and theatrical lies earned him a fittingly dark punishment. Decades later, a shocking new chapter finally hit the headlines. In 2025, he fought for a second chance, challenging his forever sentence. He's not claiming innocence, just begging for a light at the end of prison. It turned out he'd been running dress rehearsals of drama before the end. He'd staged fake hits on himself to build a false legend of danger. This horror exposed the lethal friction that ignites under heavy cultural demands. When impossible dreams met cultural pride and failures, it became a deadly poison. Still, that savage overreaction had zero excuse. That faked bias attack forced a spotlight on how detectives actually track real hate-fueled violence. Those scrawled symbols were meant to weaponize deep-seated terror over racial bloodshed. Such cold-blooded deception made the file even darker. When the truth broke that Seth slaughtered his own flesh and blood, it paralyzed the whole neighborhood. Masked as a broken soul mourning his loss, he was really the monster behind the blade. That web of lies only twisted the knife deeper. Often, the darkest horrors come from those meant to be protectors, who instead turned into cold killers. T.I. Palmer. Little T.L.I. was just a foster kid living with the Thorburns near the Logan River out in Queensland. On October 29, 2015, young T.I. simply vanished. When her remains surfaced days later, the search for answers peeled back a layer of systemic rot. Rick Thorburn, the man she called Dad, was eventually unmasked as her killer. Detectives uncovered a sickening history of abuse inside that house. Shameful secrets that the state totally missed. The reason she was silenced? To bury the truth about the filth happening behind closed doors. It turns out Rick's own son had been preying on little Tia-Lee. Terrified the world would find out, Rick decided his foster daughter had to die. By 2016, a secret tip-off finally put the handcuffs on Rick Thorburn. Everything changed when a witness finally spilled the beans on Tia-Lee's final moments. The heat turned up as forensic proof emerged, showing Tia-Lee was cruelly choked to death. Rick snuffed out her life just to keep his family's vile secrets from the police. He dumped her in the river, praying people would think she just ran off or fell in. The probe proved that the entire Thorburn clan knew exactly what went down, leading to the mother and kin being busted for lying to the cops. They were all in on the conspiracy to hide the truth about Ty's murder. Rick confessed in 2018, earning a life sentence with at least 20 years behind bars. That heavy sentence punished an ultimate betrayal, but Rick was found dead in his cell by April 2019. A 2021 hearing couldn't pinpoint exactly how he died in that cell. He barely served any time before meeting his end, leaving behind a broken foster care system in his wake. A helpless kid who needed a safe haven was instead butchered by the people paid to protect her. This horror story forced a massive overhaul of how the state watches over foster homes. Everyone started asking the same thing. How many red flags were ignored? Did they miss obvious clues that the Thorburn house was a living hell? Oversight rules were put under the microscope. The fact the whole family helped hide the body exposed a rot that went bone deep. Those perjury raps proved the family was fully complicit in burying justice for little Telly. As for the family she was born into, knowing her safe house was actually a slaughterhouse was a blow they couldn't recover from. They trusted the system to guard her, only to be utterly betrayed, sparking a war for foster care reform. Tylee's fate exposed the desperate need for better screening and constant watching over foster homes. Yet, even with modern tech, some old ghosts from the past refused to be laid to rest. The Wanda Beach killings. On January 11, 1965, two 15-year-old girls, Marianne and Christine, headed down to Wanda Beach. They vanished into the sand. Their bodies were later discovered, victims of a savage crime that remains a cold mystery. Both girls had been brutally bludgeoned and slashed with something razor-sharp. The sheer savagery left the town reeling, especially since the monster struck in broad daylight on a public beach. The 1965 manhunt was massive, but the killer slipped right through their fingers. Back then, science was primitive. There was no DNA magic to help catch the phantom. Leads went cold, despite massive investigative efforts. For decades, fresh eyes periodically scanned files for modern breakthroughs. Disaster struck when original genetic evidence vanished, killing any hope for high-tech forensics to finally crack the mystery. In 2026, whispers linked the killer Christopher Wilder to the scene. This predator hunted across Australia and America, leaving a trail of terror. His dark path ended in 1984 during a violent police confrontation. Suspicions grew as his travels placed the monster in Australia during those fateful days. His twisted habit of hunting young girls mirrored the Wanda Beach nightmare perfectly. Yet, without hard proof, these chilling links remain mere campfire stories. A staggering $1 million Australian bounty awaits anyone who cracks the case. Despite that massive fortune, the silence from the shadows remains unbroken. Detectives hunted for common threads, connecting this horror to other 1966 crimes. Haunting similarities suggest a wider spree, but without evidence, it is just dark speculation. Wanda Beach remains a permanent scar, leaving families in 60 years of unanswered agony. As time bleeds away, the trail grows cold, burying the truth in history. Losing those DNA samples was a catastrophic failure that let justice slip away. Had the proof survived, science would have unmasked the devil, proving evidence is sacred. The tragedy shattered the illusion of safety on Australia's sun-drenched shores. The realization that evil strikes in broad daylight left a chill detectives could not shake. Each dead end is soul-crushing, with every false hope twisting the knife deeper. The ghost of Christopher Wilder offers a final, tantalizing hope for a resolution. Resolution remains a ghost, as the monster responsible likely took secrets to the grave. Absent any physical proof, this mystery may haunt the world until time ends. This last nightmare involved a sprawling web of villains and remains partially unsolved. Those haunting family murders. From 1979 to 1983, 5 young souls vanished from Adelaide streets. The victims endured unspeakable rituals and drugging before their lonely lives finally ended. Known as the family murders, these killings targeted the innocent and the vulnerable. Snatched from safety, they were imprisoned before being tossed aside like trash. The systematic pattern hinted at a sick cabal rather than a lone predator. Authorities eventually snared Bevan Spencer von Einem, convicting him for one brutal slaying. He received a life sentence for the heartless termination of Richard Kelvin's life. Yet, police were certain he had partners who escaped the law's reach. Chilling evidence pointed to a dozen shadowy figures within this sick family network. These individuals allegedly conspired together, yet only von Einem faced a judge. Von Einem hid behind the mask of an accountant, mingling with high society. His polished professional exterior served as a shield, letting the predator hide in sight. Scientists built an airtight case, using microscopic clues to tie him to the crime. Chemical traces and stray fibers from his lair matched the toxins in the body. As the probe deepened, damning testimony began to name other elite members involved. Informants whispered about the depraved activities conducted by this secret, underground ring. Sadly, the proof remained too thin to bring those other suspects to justice. Dark questions linger about why the rest of the pack walked away free. Rumors swirl that powerful, high-ranking friends might have shielded the guilty from court. Though these whispers remain unverified, von Einem was caged forever in 1984. For over 40 years, he sat in a cell, clutching his secrets. He refused to utter a single name, neither his partners nor his other prey. The cold hand of death finally claimed Bevan and Vonham in December 2025. At 80, he took his final breath, carrying every dark truth to the grave. The identities of his victims and allies are now buried forever. 4 chapters of the family murders remain chillingly open. Though Vonham likely touched all 5, justice only ever pinned him for 1. A single conviction for 5 lives. For the remaining families, justice is a ghost. Detectives still sift through the ashes of these cold cases, desperate for one final breakthrough. Police still hope his unseen partners might finally face the music. Yet, as the decades slip away, the trail grows dangerously cold. These killings left a permanent, haunting scar on Adelaide's soul. Terror spread as the city realized a predator ring had been hunting for years. Suddenly, every parent lived in a state of hypervigilance. It proved how easily a pack of monsters can slip through the cracks when evidence vanishes. Bringing a coordinated circle of killers to justice became a legal nightmare. The lack of further charges remains a bitter, unresolved controversy. For those still waiting for answers, this legal silence is a soul-crushing weight. Suspecting Vonam's guilt without seeing him pay for their specific loss offers zero peace. We still hope these cold secrets will surface. I appreciate you watching. Tap here to witness more mysteries